Ready to go live.
Go live
I
again.
I like looking at the list that you put together for the questions because there's so many good ones on there. You really mixed it up.
I did mix it up. I've spanned all sorts of ages.
Yeah, you did all kinds of years and ages, and no, it's cool. One of them I didn't really know. Hey, Gary. But most of them I knew. A couple of them I was like, oh, I don't know this person. Oh, Molly's here. Yay.
Oh, hey, Molly, Carrie, Ellen.
So happy to have you guys here. If you're not sick of us already from our live walk. Santa Cruz sounds so nice. Hey, Janet.
I know. Ellen posted a really pretty picture of the ocean today.
I want to be next to an ocean right now. A warm beach.
There's somebody that's next to sunshine I would take.
Yeah, that too. Today was pretty nice in Paris, though. It was nice and sunny.
It was beautiful. It's beautiful. So great that Carrie gets those shots, and you sent me some too.
Yeah, we were doing the practice run. Hey, Sunday. Yeah, so happy to have you ladies here. We're going to be talking about authors who were inspired and influenced by Paris today. So we expect you all to give some guesses. And we love, like, even if you have no idea at all, just like tune in, throw in a guess, you know. It's okay.
I do hate to tell Carrie this, but I don't think there's a Louis in there.
she loves her Louis. Oh, you're so lucky, only 2 miles from the beach.
Oh.
Well, Molly's been posting some beautiful pictures from Versailles because she's like back up against the park where like everyone can just go walk their dogs and not pay to get in, you know, like the back entrance to the Versailles Gardens for the locals.
So nice.
Looks beautiful.
I think I saw a picture that it looked like she was going to make the Saint Honoré dessert, which is one of my favorites.
I have to tune in for that one. I went to Molly's house one time to take pictures, and like she just has a fridge full of cake. So if you like cake, definitely go visit Molly. She sent me home with lots of yummy things. Yes, just guess, Carrie. We love guesses. So like we said, we're just going to ask some trivia questions. Feel free to just throw in any name. There are no wrong guesses. I mean, there are wrong guesses, but we want you
But there's always a valiant try.
Yeah, we like when you try. This is a judge-free zone, guys. All right, so we're going to start off with the first question. And Claudine, are we going to give them any hints? Like, do we give them a list or not? They just have to throw some names out there.
Some of these I think are pretty easy.
Okay, we got some pretty easy ones. I would say so. I mean, the first one I think I actually could have gotten, which...
Yeah, well, I hope so, because we did a podcast on it.
All right, guys. So if you're just tuning in, we're doing trivia on authors who were influenced and inspired by France to write. So throw in some author names. We're going to start with the first one. This author moved to Paris and discovered a love of cooking. I'm sure we have some good guesses for this one. This author moved to Paris and discovered a love of cooking. Who do we think that was, guys? Yes, Molly is involved in cake, all things like French patisserie. She does online virtual cooking. You definitely need to get in contact with her. She is awesome. Carrie Park says Julia Child. Janice says Julia. Oh no, Misty says the video's not playing for her. Maybe try to reboot. Is that even a word anymore? Close and reopen. Good child. We got some good guesses here.
I see Coco moving behind you.
Yeah, he's traumatized because we left him alone for the virtual walk for 4 hours. So he's more up my butt than usual. Guys, yes, these are great guesses. Julia Child is correct, and David Leibovitz is not a bad guess either. But
Ellen. That is a very good one. It is, and he could have. We could almost say him too, because he did write a book about not only his trials in Paris, but also many books about his cooking. But it was, of course, Julia, our favorite lady. On November 3rd, 1948, she and Paul arrived in Paris. And while she was there, she ended up trying to figure out a way, of course, to to spend her days. She was pretty bored by everything. So she ended up eventually meeting two women, Simca Beck and Louisette Berthold. And she ended up writing Mastering the Art of French Cooking with them, that was released in 1961.
It took them forever to finish it.
It did. And they had already started it. And then the American side of it, a gentleman, was not working out so well. So they asked Julia, and then Julia kind of took it all over.
Yes. And we also had the guy who wrote the book about pancakes and open restaurants, Craig Carlson. Yes, he just released a new book, Janice. That's correct. So many cooks were inspired to write in Paris. That's a very good.
Very inspirational place.
Yes, love it. Natis is here. Yay. Okay, so next question. He helped save the career of Manet. So this is a writer. We're talking about writers who were influenced and inspired by France, by Paris. Is it just Paris or France?
Both.
Yeah. These people wrote books because they lived or had connections to France. I mean, they all lived in France, basically. Yep, they all lived in France.
At some point.
So next question. He helped save the career of Manet. Who do we think this was? Which writer helped save the career of Manet? Any guesses, guys? I mean, we love just throwing out any guesses. There is no dumb answers here. He wrote a book, but he also helped save the career of Manet.
19th century.
19th century, guys. Who knows their 19th century writers?
Everybody's like, oh yeah, that helped.
That's my Tuesdays, just studying 19th century literature.
Hey, some of us do.
That would be Claudine's Tuesday. And James said, yeah, Craig. We love Craig. I think Craig's in California right now. Lucky guy. He might be back by now. I know they were going somewhere nice for Christmas. Actually, no, they went to the South. I can't keep up with everybody's social media lives. So many fun things happening. So any guesses about who helped save the career of Manet?
Very famous name.
The last name starts with Z, guys. I mean, there's not very many writers, 19th century. Let's start with a Z.
Zorro.
Zorro was a writer.
I don't think he was a writer. It's the only Z I could think of. Zelda. Not Zelda, though.
Zelda was a writer. Pizarro helped Manet with his mortgage. We'd have to check Claudine on that one.
I'm not so sure. Well, there was a lot of people helping out. Manet and Monet had a lot of money problems.
Yes. Good thing they had friends with money.
Yeah.
Good guesses, guys. It was Zola.
It was Émile Zola in 1885. Manet had painted Olympia, and it was supposed to be shown at the Paris Salon. And when they showed it to the jury that picks the paintings for it, they were completely outraged and were just refused to show it. At that time, the only time you really saw a woman fully nude in art, it was as something biblical or an allegory. And so here was this, everyday woman, and here she is, naked, sprawled out on her chaise lounge. And so it was caused a huge issue. But Zola had heard about it and went to go see it at Manet's studio. And then he became good friends with Manet, and he wrote a pamphlet basically speaking about Manet and the painting, and wrote a book about him, and really did all he could to help save his career. And the two of them had a close friendship. Manet later painted a painting of Émile Zola sitting at his desk. And you can see on the desk, there is one of the books is the book he wrote about Manet. But my favorite part of the painting is up in the corner. In the upper corner, there is a small version of Olympia. So the painting was later shown at the Salon. So in the end, Manet got Olympia into the Salon.
I love that. The workaround,
Yes. But in this one, her eyes are actually looking down. So he changed it a little in the way that, because in the original one, she's kind of looking out towards you, and he changed the way her eyes were looking.
Oh, I like that. I have to revisit that one.
One of my favorites.
If you guys are just tuning in, we are doing trivia about authors influenced by France? So these questions all have to do with authors who wrote books because of their time in France. So good guesses, guys. Next question. She was forced to write under her husband's name, resulting in her best-known books holding his name. And so she finally took it back. I mean, I feel like this happened a lot to many female writers of the history, but this one, if you were on our virtual tour today, we visited her home. I mean, that's like a dead giveaway, but she was forced to write under her husband's name, resulting in her best-known books, holding his name until she could finally take it back. It's funny because when I told Giuseppe, she was the one that also he locked her up in her room until she would write books. Giuseppe said he wants to do that to me. I'm like, we're not.
And then the book, one of the most famous books she wrote, the name of the book is fantastic.
I love it. Good guesses, guys. Colette, George Sand. All good guesses.
George is coming up, though.
Yeah, keep that one. Keep that one somewhere.
Not the way.
Colette. And Colette. Good job, guys. It is Colette.
Yes, of course it was Colette. She married Henri Villard, who went by the name Willie, in 1893. She wrote a book at the time. He kind of encouraged her when they went back to where she grew up and visited the school she was at. And he kind of encouraged her to write a book after she was telling him the different stories. So she wrote a book and then he tossed it into a drawer for 4 years. And then one day he came across it and looked at it, told her to kind of spice it up, add a little to it. He then later published it. And of course, those books, the first book was Claudine à l'école, Claudine at school. So of course, I've known about this book since I was little, since nothing in America, nobody has the same name. You know, when you're a little kid, you don't get the license plate on your bike, but I got it when I went to Paris. But he ended up selling the rights to her books. So she had to go through a big fight in the end to be able to even have her name on the book. I've picked up some when I'm in Paris. This one's Claudine at Paris. The second book is about her in Paris. And I always like, especially the bouquinistes, I love to find them. But this one has all of them in there. I've had this book probably for like 20 years or so.
Oh, wow.
But she later she had to go through a pretty big fight. And then because he basically took all the credit of anything about the books, about her first books.
Typical man stealing the shine of his wife's right.
Yep.
Stealing the shine. All right, guys, good guesses. Our next question. His first novel started in Paris and traveled all the way to Spain. So this was his very first novel. It started in Paris and then traveled to Spain. Who do you guys think it was? Christine says her daughter, Natalie, has the same problem with the souvenir names. Natalie, really? In America, you can't find a Natalie?
Probably not spelled like that. That's the problem.
My name's spelled weird, too. I can never find my name. My ex, Hemingway. What do you guys think? His first novel started in Paris and traveled all the way to Spain. Good guesses, guys. We got Hemingway, Jenny's ex, apparently. Hemingway, Ernest, Claudine Hemingway.
I like that.
Hemingway. Good guesses, guys. All right, I think we know this one. You are correct. It is Ernest Hemingway.
It was, and of course, it's easy. It's the same with same name, same relation. But as on his birthday in 1925, on July 21st, he actually decided to start writing the pages that would become The Sun Also Rises. He had actually started doing a little bit of it when he was in Chicago before he even moved to Paris. And of course, those notes got lost when the manuscripts got lost at the Gare de Lyon. But he ended up starting it in 1925. And it does start it starts in Paris, and it mentions the Closerie des Lilas restaurant that's up at the top of, at the bottom of Luxembourg Garden. And he actually would sit there with his friend, John Dos Passot, and they would actually look through a Bible and to get the idea for the name, because originally it was going to be called Fiesta. It's still called Fiesta. The French version is called Fiesta, but it was originally going to be called Fiesta, and then they found this passage in Ecclesiastes, which is one generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abides forever. The sun rises and the sun goeth down, which is pretty fitting because a lot of the book is also about the lost generation. So when you talk about one generation, the lost generation, which is something, Gertrude overheard somebody in a garage say, but he never really liked that moniker. He didn't really think that that's what they were. But that was the book. He later ended up in the divorce, giving all the rights to Hadley for the book, which worked out pretty well from her because in the first 6 months, she got the equivalent of what would now be $90,000.
Wow.
Just in the first 6 months of the book.
That was a good giveaway.
And if you are going to read it, I definitely recommend getting this version. I have all these on my website, on my boutique, but this is the Hemingway Library Edition. They've done this with a few of his books where they go through and have it re-edited to basically what he really originally wanted the intention to be from his notes. So if you're going to read a version, this is the great version to get.
Yeah, I like the cover. That's fun.
Yeah.
I think Fiesta just doesn't ring as well.
No, but that's what it's still called. And if you find, I have a French copy and it just says Fiesta.
That's really funny. That doesn't sound as strong as also rises. All right, guys, good guesses. Let's see if we can keep it going. This one's a little more difficult, but I think you're a smart bunch. So this French author wrote his most famous works, Les Fleurs de Mal, railing against the restoration of Paris. So this was a French author. He did not like the restoration of Paris, and he wrote a book called Les Fleurs de Mal. So who was it, guys? I would have no idea, but you're probably...
Somebody mentioned his name earlier.
Someone mentioned his name already.
Not George Sand.
So French author, he wrote a book like going against the restoration. Of course, Danny, we want your guesses. James was the one. Is James the one that mentioned him earlier?
Maybe.
I can't remember who it was. Sumner, yes.
He was quite the character, this person.
I don't know anything about him. I'm excited to learn about him. Oh, look at you guys. The prizes are a pat on the back. All right, guys. So Carrie got it. Sumner got it. James got it. Jane got it.
It was Baudelaire, Charles Baudelaire. He was born in 1821. And his early days, he would spend most of his time translating Edgar Allan Poe's poems into French, which probably is what started him down this his road of his crazy life. We could go on. We could have a 2-hour live stream about Baudelaire because he was quite the interesting character. He had a lot of issues, but he wrote in 1857, he wrote Les Fleurs de Mal, the flowers of evil. And it was, he basically hated what was becoming of Paris. He hated the modernization and the changing and what Haussmann was doing. And he hated about the Louvre. He basically hated everything. And so this book is, it's probably his most famous piece that he ever wrote. His personal life was crazy. He was involved with different women and had lots of drug issues. He lived basically all over Paris. I think, there's probably every other block. You could probably find a place where Baudelaire lived at one point.
And he did not like the restoration of Paris.
Yes. Yeah.
I like it. I need to read more about him because he sounds like a fascinating dude. No wonder he restored. He lived everywhere. He was really enjoying the streets. Who is the current version of him?
Oh, gosh. Twitter.
All right, guys. The next question has 2 answers. So his book never would have been published if it wasn't for this woman. So there's 2 answers to this one. His book would never have been published if it wasn't for this woman. And we actually just talked about this woman on the podcast. Did that episode come out yet?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, a while ago, I think.
Yeah, it came out a while ago. We talked about her on the podcast on our
Oh,
Mondays.
back in September.
Yes. I have no concept of time.
Yes.
His book never would have been published if it wasn't for this woman. So which woman helped a famous author get published in France? Christine says Joyce and Sylvia Beach. Not a bad guess, Christine. Does anyone else have a guess? Two-word answer, two-name answer. It's a woman helping a man. JJ, I like it.
I know, I like Jenny, just JJ. I know exactly who she means.
I call him JJ. That's way more like new age.
Oh my gosh, are you reading that, Christine? Are you reading that book? Oh my God, when did you start? Did you start like 4 years ago? It's like the hugest book.
We got a lot of time on our hands right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Great time to read this book. Good guesses, guys. You're right. James Joyce and Sylvia Beach.
It was James. He would spend almost every day in Shakespeare and Company when it was on. He first at the first two locations, Dupuytren and also Rue de l'Odéon, my favorite. He would sit in there and he would kind of complain about how he wasn't able to find a publisher. And so finally, I think Sylvia, being sweet, wonderful Sylvia, she just kind of said, oh, okay, well, what if I published it for you? She was very smart. She ended up starting basically what you would do nowadays, some people do with a Kickstarter. She started a subscription so people could pay in advance for their copy. And she found a printer at Dijon that would do it for her under the understanding of how he was going to be paid. But Joyce was really difficult to deal with. Every time they'd get an edition done, he would find something he wanted changed. He was very difficult to work with. And in the end, doing this for him almost bankrupted Sylvia. She had to be saved by quite a few of her wealthy customers. Ended up basically paying her a certain amount each month. And they would do different book readings and stuff like that. And then Joyce one day just found somebody else that wanted to publish it. And he kind of just walked away from her. So it almost ruined her, but in the end it didn't. Ulysses it's all about one day spent in Dublin. I believe it's in Dublin. But I think the book's about this thick.
Wow. I like the reading one chapter a month. I've never even attempted to read it. It just doesn't. One day in Dublin. Wow.
I've thought about it. I've done events before. They do a thing, and I think it's always Christine, let me know if this is, I think it's June 16th. It's called Bloomsday. And there's a thing that goes around the world where it's read all over the world in different cafes and stuff. And so I did that one time as an event because the owner of the company I work for was really into it. Nobody came.
Good old JJ.
Nobody came.
I love it. Portrait of an Artist. Yeah, that sounds more interesting than One Day in Dublin.
Yeah.
That big a book. All right, good guesses, guys. Next question. His book saved the most beloved cathedral in France twice. Wow, twice. I didn't know it was twice. So this guy's book saved the most beloved cathedral in France, not only once, but twice, guys. Who was the author who saved the most beloved cathedral in France with his writing? Lots of events, JJ.
See, I don't think I've made these very hard.
But yeah, I think. Oh, Dawn's here.
Hi, Dawn. I think Dawn and Carol were there this morning. I could only see like the first 3 people that were on our live walk.
Yeah.
I know that Carrie and other people, but if you don't know, every Sunday we are doing live walks in Paris. So check the Facebook page for those.
You can walk around Paris with us. We'll shoot video, and Claudine gives you all the best history. We love Claudine. Good guesses, guys. It is indeed Victor Hugo.
Yes, on January 15th, so coming up, the anniversary, 1831, he finished his first draft of Notre Dame du Paris. In America, you know that is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. But he ended up, he actually was up against a deadline. He wanted to have more time, but they said no. So he just released what he had. And then he ended up doing another version after that was included with illustrations. I'm going to have something on my Instagram on the 15th about it with some pictures of the actual first edition of the book, which is really awesome. But he ended up basically people fell in love with the book, and then they ended up falling in love with the church. And it was in really bad disrepair after the revolution and everything else. So the book actually spurred it on to be rebuilt. And then in 2019, when the fire happened, the book ended up becoming a huge bestseller again. And the publisher gave all of the money to the restoration of Notre Dame.
Oh, wow.
It raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars again. And so they gave it to Notre Dame.
Good old Quasi. Is his name Quasi in the French?
Quasimodo.
Yeah, Quasimodo in the French.
Yeah. I watched an old black and white version of the movie, which was really interesting. And then I watched the Disney version because I don't think I ever saw the Disney version. And so it was pretty interesting to see it from black and white to a Disney version.
Yeah, probably very different.
Very different.
Christine, what time are our virtual walks for PST? Very early.
Usually 7 or 8 a.m.
Yeah, 7 or 8 a.m. The problem right now is the sun is going down in Paris at 4 p.m. Like 4 to 5 is the sunset hour. And we try to do it at sunset hour. So we have to start kind of early for you guys on the West Coast. And Claudine, she gets up early to chat with us. All right, guys. So who wrote books about the romances of Marie Antoinette and the Valois? Valois. That's a fun
This one I'm really tricking people because I could have mentioned something that's incredibly famous that this person wrote.
All right, guys. Tricky ones, but he wrote books about the romances of Marie Antoinette and the Valois. I want everyone just to say Valois. It's such a fun word.
Valois.
Valois.
The Valois was the branch of the kings that was Henry II, all of those guys.
Happy ending with Disney. I'm guessing the black and white one did not have a happy ending. No happy endings.
Fuzzy-moto, that's hilarious.
It's really funny. I like that. Fuzzy-moto. All right, so who wrote books about the romances of Marie Antoinette and the Valois? Carrie says Dumas. That's a fun word to say as well, guys. Everyone says Dumas and Valois with me. Any other guesses, guys? Carrie seems pretty sure on her guess. Lots of hearts there.
We got lots of hearts in there and an exclamation point.
That seems like a serious answer. What could have been the other answer, Claudine?
The other very famous book this person wrote was The Three Musketeers.
Aha!
So Carrie is correct.
Alexander Dumas.
It was Alexander Dumas. Of course, the Three Musketeers, just totally had a mind blank for a second. Three Musketeers, of course, was as famous, but I definitely need to check these out because he actually wrote books about Louis XIV. He wrote books about the Valois, which is Francois I, and Catherine de Medici, which I can't wait. I got to read him to see what he said about her. But he also wrote a 8-volume edition of books about the loves of Marie Antoinette.
I love that 8-book edition.
Yeah.
Some love going on. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, so I got to read all of those. I was like, oh, I got to see what those are all about.
I wonder if her husband's in any of them. I'm saying that.
It's called The Loves of Marie Antoinette.
I'm guessing they're definitely not written in there.
There wasn't a lot of, hanky-panky going on between those two.
8 editions, guys. Good guess, Carrie. All right, next question. She wrote under a pen name and became the first author to live off her books. So do we mean the first female author or the first?
Yes.
author?
Yes. And she was the first one that she was able to actually she could basically have a life off the money from her books.
Good job. She wrote under a pen name and became the first female author to live off her books.
And we did do a podcast about her.
We did do a podcast.
I don't think, that's out in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Or in February.
Very excited for that one.
Yeah, Ellen, that there is that really great statue of her, of Dumas, and it's also really close to there is a statue dedicated to Sarah Bernhardt.
Good guesses, guys. George Sand.
It was, of course, George Sand moved to Paris, and she was. You have to listen to the podcast; it's really good. She was married to this kind of jerky guy that was just trying to spend all her money and sleeping with all the staff. And so, when she finally had too much of it, she left and moved to Paris. She met a man named Jules Sandeau, and they ended up co-writing different articles and pamphlets together. And then when she wanted to write her first book, which is one of the ones that she's most known for, Indiana, she wanted to do it under his name because at the time, writing as a woman under a woman's name wasn't really something you really were able to do. So he said no, because he had nothing to do with the writing of her book, Indiana. And so that's when she changed her name to George Sand.
Smart woman. That's probably why she was able to make a living off her books.
Yeah, but she ended up becoming one of the most well-known writer in all of Europe, even at that, especially for that time, which is even crazier.
So Sumner visited her fabulous home in Barrie, and there was a cast of Chopin's hand. I feel like Chopin's hand is everywhere because his hand is the Musée de la Vie Romantique.
Yeah, I think it is there too. Yeah, they had the podcast we talk about. She's mostly known for dressing like a man, which she just actually at the time she did because it was cheaper. And at the time she had all of this family money from her grandmother. But when she left her husband, she kind of didn't get to take any of that with her. So it was actually cheaper for her to wear men's clothes. It was much cheaper to do. You actually had to get a special license to be able to do that in Paris. Rosa Bonheur is another one, which we're doing a podcast about her as well. She's another one that dressed like a man, but it was mostly just because it was cheaper and easier.
I love that. Women ahead of their times.
So if you had to get a special permit to wear pants.
I mean, I feel like I need a special permit to put pants back on. I've been living. Bring it back. So next question, guys. His book, published after his death, has always been in print and became a bestseller again after the terrorist attacks in Paris. I had no idea it became a bestseller after the terrorist attack. That's very strange. Again, yeah. Mm-hmm. So his book was published after his death and has always been in print and became a bestseller again after the terrorist attacks in Paris. Who was it, guys? And it wasn't his first book, but it was published after his death.
After his death.
Yeah. But
Janice, I've seen that. There's a plaque at that building.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Well, you have to pay attention to the plaques. Like there's so many everywhere.
Oh my God, I love them. I'm obsessed with them.
But weren't you was it you telling me that some of them are not real, or anybody can ask for a plaque or something?
Yeah, you could anybody. I mean, there's a lot of work because it's France and all the paperwork and bureaucracy, but there's nobody governing over to make sure what's true. So there's like the one that's on the building where Hemingway had an office just around the corner from Place de Contrescarpe. It says in there that he lived there from 1921 to 1926, I think is what it says. But he didn't, it was just an office and he didn't live there, and the dates are incorrect too. So anybody could kind of get one of those. It's a lot of work to get those plaques because John Baxter was telling me he lives in the building where Sylvia Beach used to live, and they thought about getting one and it just became such an ordeal. They just said, forget it.
Yeah. It's like everything. It's paperwork.
Yeah. But the oars, when you see they shaped like an oar, those are the history of Paris ones. Those you could trust those.
Oh, they're shaped like an oar.
Yeah, they're George what's the Stark? Can't think of his first name. He did them. They're supposed to be the shape of an oar because of Paris and the boat and the motto of.
I don't think I've ever noticed the oar ones.
I love those.
I love those. His book published after his death, has always been in print and became a bestseller again after the terrorist attacks in Paris. It was actually A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway.
I thought that was going to be so easy. I think I threw everybody by the terrorist attacks.
Yeah, we're like, what? I don't understand why it became another bestseller after that. That's so weird.
I think after when they had the big attack, that's when it skyrocketed again. I think just because of the obviously the theme of Paris. But in November 1956, the Ritz ended up finding 2 small trunks in their basement and contacted him to basically, we have these trunks here, come get it. A lot has been written, a little bit. The story seems to, it's like a game of telephone. The story gets more gigantic every time you hear somebody tell the story. Somebody said it was in a Louis Vuitton trunk made just by Louis Vuitton, just for him, which wasn't exactly, it's not true. But there was 2 small trunks, and they had clothes and some manuscripts and books and a bunch of other stuff in it. And so he and the 4th wife, who we will not name, Mary, they went there and ended up getting another trunk and putting it all in there, bringing it back to the U.S. In there, he had his pages of some shorter stories that he had been working on that ended up becoming A Movable Feast. He ended up starting to work on it again in those last years, in the last 7 or 8 months before he died. And they even found paper that he was typing on in the typewriter when he killed himself. And he wanted to definitely write towards the end. He wanted to make sure to write the chapter about Hadley and dedicate it back. So it's kind of like his memoirs of Paris, or it's a lot about his love of Hadley. But after he passed away, Mary and an editor at Scribner's decided to edit it a lot and take things out. She actually took some of the things out. One of the biggest things people talk about in that book is the way he talked about Fitzgerald. And they edited it to make it sound worse than what he actually was saying about Fitzgerald. She also edited out some things about Hadley and Pauline. She was a very, very bitter woman. But if you are this one, I tell everybody, if you're going to read one, read this version. It's the restored edition. I actually got this at Shakespeare and Company. And this is the best one. This has you see the Shakespeare and Company stamp. This one is great because it actually does take his original writings and put it back in there. There's it's really fantastic how they did it. They ended up also adding all the different versions that he had, his original version for different chapters. And there's just a lot of notes in there. It's if you're going to read any version of Movable Feast, read this one.
I think I have that one too. That's like one of the first books. Has it been out for a while, the restored version?
Yeah, it's been out for quite a while, but it's his grandson Sean was the one who did a lot of the notes in there, but it's really fascinating to read it.
Yes, Christine. Sean.
Yes,
right, guys, we threw you with that one. So the next question: her book was also published after her death and tells of her love affair with France. So was published after her death and talks about her love affair with France. Who do we think that was, guys? Yes. Shakespeare and Company. They've been extra busy since the stores were allowed to open. I think they've been losing their minds with people coming back to buy books, which is always
That's great because they were getting a little dicey for them to survive.
Yeah, no, they've been super busy. Everybody is going in there now that they're allowed to. So her book was also published after her death and tells of her love affair with France. So it wasn't finished before she died?
It was started before she died.
And then her family finished it. Mm-hmm. Who do we think that was, guys? Talking about a love affair. It was a woman.
We may have already had a question.
It might have already been brought up in the beginning of this trivia. Who do we think had a love affair? It was a woman, a love affair with France. Reoccurring theme for a lot of us.
Yes.
Published after her death. Any guesses, guys? I was Carrie, yes. Julia Child. Carrie's such a good guesser. I mean, I kind of just gave it away by saying Carrie's such a. It was Julia Child. Oh,
Usually I'm the one giving everything away.
Carrie's so smart.
Carrie is so smart. It was Julia Child. Of course, she ended up sitting down with her nephew, Alex Prudhomme. And right before she died, just in the last few months, they had a huge stack of letters that she had, but most of them were between Paul and his brother. Alex Prudhomme, I believe, was the nephew of Paul Child. And they had this huge stack of letters. They were very prolific in writing letters, and they saved them all, which is really fantastic. And so he sat down with her just in those last few months of her life, taking notes, and basically she was telling him all these different stories, and then he put it together. And it's My Life in France, which is one of the books we did in our book club. It is one of my very favorite books. I absolutely love it. It basically, the way she describes Paris is the same way that I feel about Paris. So when I read it, I think I've read it 3 times now. It's always just like a nice little warm book. But it ended up being made into that movie, Julia and Julia. It was the Julia Child side of the story was based on the book.
I love that. We love Julia. All right, guys, we came down to the last 3 questions. We love all these great guesses. The next question is, one of the original dandies, his fight to the death with absinthe would finally do him in. Today, you can leave him a kiss. So we're talking about writers with French connections. I'll repeat the question for you. One of the original dandies, his fight to the death with absinthe would finally do him in. And today you can leave him a kiss if you would like. So can you get the absinthe with the crazy stuff in it still? I don't think they sell that in France.
The wormwood.
Yeah, the wormwood. I think you could still get it in Germany.
Yeah, I know you could. They just only let the U.S. only just let you buy it. It just within the last decade or so.
Can you get it?
But I don't think I don't think it has the same wormwood craziness in it anymore.
That's what let the wormwood.
Yeah.
Not happening. So you can still leave him a kiss, which is also disgusting during a pandemic, guys. Don't leave him a kiss because you might be.
Well, they kind of fixed it so you kind of can't as much anymore, though.
Yeah, it's not as much fun, at least.
It's so gross, though.
It's all gross.
It was so gross before the pandemic. Like, that's just yucky.
Now you don't want to be doing it.
Yeah.
Good guesses, guys. You are all correct. It was Oscar Wilde.
Of course, Oscar. Towards the end of his life, he went through quite a bit, thrown into jail, quite a few other things. But towards the end of his life, he was basically broke. And he he would stay, exactly, Christine. He ended up staying at a little hotel that was on the Rue des Beaux-Arts, really close to the Seine. And every day he would walk up to Les Deux Magots. And so in the morning, he'd go up there and have his cafe and his croissant. Then he would come back later on and have absinthe and just drink absinthe all night, and then stumble back to his hotel. The hotel at the time was called the Hotel d'Alsace. And so it was this really cheap hotel, but it had this crazy wallpaper in there. And he is quoted as saying, and Anthony Bourdain stayed in that same hotel room and did a whole scene of after some absinthe, and said that, he's having, my wallpaper and I are having a fighting duel to the death. One of us has to go. And he died in that room in November 1900.
Wow. And Anthony Bourdain stayed in the same room?
Anthony Bourdain stayed in the same room. Now it's called L'Hotel, and it's incredibly expensive. It's a little tiny boutique hotel. And you could go into the bar. I went there to go check it out and had one drink in the bar, which was, I think, 29 euros.
Wow. So just like the Ritz.
Yes. I would, I'd pick the Bar Hemingway over that, but it was really cool to see. I guess they thought I was staying there, so I should have just played along with it and then really gone and explored the whole place. They thought I looked like somebody else had been there, but it's kind of where a lot of the celebrities stay. Leo DiCaprio and U2 and a bunch of other people. The rock stars stay there.
Bono. Hey, Bono. All right, guys, next question. Originally from Australia, he finally made his way to Paris and writes about the most beautiful walks in Paris and more. Who do you guys think this writer is? He's originally from Australia. He finally made his way to Paris, and now he writes about the most beautiful walks in Paris and more. This guy is still alive. A lot of these people are not with us anymore. Actually, I think all of them are not with us anymore. But this guy's still kicking.
He's still kicking.
He's still kicking. He's still taking beautiful walks.
One of my favorites.
He's a buddy of Claudine's.
Absolutely. Absolutely love him. If you haven't seen, we did a book last month. We did a book club and we recorded it, and it's on my YouTube, Bleu Blanc Rouge.
The YouTubes, you guys are right. It is John Baxter.
John Baxter. Yes, he was originally from Australia, of course. He moved to LA for a while, quite a few years, where he, I believe he was teaching screenplay writing. He did a lot of work out there. He first was writing a lot of books about different celebrities. George Lucas, which is one he gave me to give to my mother because she's a huge George Lucas fan. But De Niro and a bunch of other people. He ended up meeting Mary Dominique, and he ended up moving to Paris, put everything aside and moved to Paris, and they got married. He's written over 40 books. He's written quite a few about Paris. The Most Beautiful Walk in Paris is a fantastic book. He also does one. He did one on Saint-Germain, one on Montparnasse. He's currently taking a break from Paris books right now and writing one about Charles Boyer, which I think comes out in the next few months. He was a great actor. If you ever saw one of my favorite movies, Barefoot in the Park with Robert Redford and Jane Fonda, he's the crazy guy that lives upstairs who's just super fun and awesome. But yeah, John Baxter, if you don't know him, check him out.
Look him up, guys. I had no idea he's written so many. That's amazing. Another Australian in Paris.
Yes.
I didn't know he was Australian either.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking it out with us. We love chatting with you. We have one more question for you. We'll always have Paris. It's my favorite.
Yes.
Sounds like a nice one. All right, guys. Last question. She came to Paris to follow a dream and shares it with all her readers. I feel like this could be a lot of people, but she's still kicking. This
one's still alive.
Wasn't published after her death, thank God.
Nope.
She came to Paris to follow a dream, and she shares it with her readers. Who could that be? I mean, I feel like there's so many writers who, Paris.
You really not know who this is? Oh, Dawn.
We love Dawn. Where is Claudine? We need Claudine's book or Paris.
I know, we're working on it. It's hard to work on that and everything else at the same time.
KK.
Yes. So I'll say what the answer is. The answer is Krystal. I know, I'm totally embarrassing her, but yep,
there it is.
There it is. It has a quote on the back by Claudine Hemingway.
Claudine Hemingway, one of my first readers.
But yes, I was one of the first. I got to get a sneak peek, and I absolutely loved it. So if you haven't read it, you should definitely check it out. You have anything to say about your writing and your life and your
I mean, where to start?
Where to start? We could talk about the stuff you left out.
Textbook. No, but thank you guys, everyone who did contribute to, the quotes on the back, and also for reading and buying it. I really appreciate it, guys. And thank you for hanging out with us. We love doing this with you. And we hope to see you. And we do this every 2 weeks. We do different trivia. And then every weekend we have our live virtual walks. And of course, you can listen to the podcast every week as well. Mondays are Paris History, FAK Hemingway. And Wednesdays are just the normal talking to living people in Paris who were inspired.
I'm going to do a living person on ours one day.
Yeah.
Maybe Catherine Deneuve.
I like that idea. We should more
we could get a living person.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it'll be Diane de Poitiers, who was the true love of Henry II and the arch enemy of Catherine de Medicis. So that's a really great one. She was a fascinating woman. And you could always check ClaudineHemingway.com. I always post a bunch of pictures and stuff that go with the podcast as well.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later.
We'll see you soon.
You're not sick of us. We love it. Keep
Thank you.
All right, guys. Bye.